Hot Rod Association Championship Drag Racing. The 1986 Mile High Nationals. Speeds in excess of 250 miles an hour, covering the quarter-mile distance in less than 6 seconds. Drag racing from the NHRA. On the western edge of the Great Plains and nestled on the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains is Denver, Colorado. The capital of the state, Denver is 5,280 feet above sea level, the mile-high city. 1 hour west of Denver is the Continental Divide at 11,000-foot elevation. From this watershed point, streams flow east of the Atlantic, west to the Pacific. Tourism is Colorado's third largest source of revenue, and Echo Lake, a favorite site for visitors. Another is Red Rocks Park, a natural amphitheater where stars such as John Denver perform. Just over the mountain from Red Rock Park, this is one of the most incredible vistas in all of drag racing. This is the view from Bandimere Speedway near Denver, Colorado. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and this is the 9th annual NHRA Mile High Nationals. There's nearly 500 racers here competing for almost $500,000 in prize money. There's been some incredible stories, and Steve Evans has the details.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone who saw our Budweiser Summer Nationals coverage from Englishtown, New Jersey just 2 weeks ago knows the big excitement was created by Big Daddy Don Garlits and his now famous over-backwards wheel stand. The question was, could he get that car repaired and back on the trail in just 2 weeks to be here for the Mile Highs? The answer is yes. I talked to him just before first round action. Don, when you got the black car back to your shop in Ocala, Florida, how much damage had the moonshot at Englishtown caused?
Well, it did extensive damage to the front end, Steve. The back end went into the jig real nice. There was no damage to the back for all practical purposes, but we had to put almost all new tubing from the driver compartment forward and a new front end, lots of repair to the fuel tank, and it was hurt pretty bad up there.
Big Daddy's hopes for an immediate comeback were shattered earlier today in round 1 Top Fuel action. Dick LaHaye, runner-up at the last 2 events and really hungry, carted a 5.77 elapsed time to Garlett's slower 5.86. Big Daddy was done. This race has traditionally been one of upsets. A combination that might be a world beater at sea level suddenly becomes an also run at 5,800 feet. That might be what happened to this car. Darrell Gwynn, who's been so strong, he won the last 2 races on the NHRA circuit. But in round number 1 earlier today, Joe Amato came from behind a stunning 5.69 to just drive around Darrell Gwynn's 5.76. Neither driver knew who won. Joe Amato ran over here to talk to Darrell Gwynn, and his first words were, "Great drag race." Boy, it was that, but unfortunately, he got around you.
Yeah, he did. Started nosing over at the finish line. I wasn't sure whether it was nosing over Rich or whether it was hurting itself, and I didn't really want to get on the button too bad, so that's why he beat me, but we'll be back next week.
Also out in first round Top Fuel action, Dan Pastorini, who won the Southern Nationals this year at the hands of California fireman Ray Stutz. The happiest first-round winner had to be former boat racing champion Eddie Hill. Even though Gary Ormsby broke on the starting line, Hill carted a fine 5.78 elapsed time, and what a celebration. You'd have thought they won the whole race. After totally dominating drag boat racing for at least 10 years, winning everything there was, it has taken Eddie Hill 1 full year to get his first win light in NHRA national event competition, and that's a happy crew you see coming in behind him. Good job. Maybe shaving your beard off had something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe a little ladder or something. God, it feels great, man. It took a year, but man, it feels good. Come here, man.
5.78 did it for Eddie Hill in the first round. And this is Ursi Hill. She's a very important part of this operation. We'll see them in round 2. Round 1 of Funny Car was far more predictable. All of the sea-level hotshots also made it work a mile high, especially this man, Kenny Bernstein. Low elapsed time in the event at 5.82 seconds. In Pro Stock, all the front runners advanced into round 2, being paced by Bob Glidden, 7.84 seconds in his Ford Thunderbird.
Steve, it's obvious that Bob Glidden is maintaining the performance level with his T-Bird that he had a couple of weeks ago when he set the NHRA national record. The largest crowd in the 9-year history of the Mile High Nationals has jammed into Vandermeer Speedway, not missing a moment of the excitement. The 1986 Mile High Nationals is being brought to you by Goodyear. Goodyear Eagles. You either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them. And by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. And by Fram Bendix Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Automotive. And by Ford. Have you driven a Ford lately? Coming right up, it's round number 2 racing in Top Fuel Eliminator at the Mile High Nationals. We'll be right back. In the high country of Colorado, one of the most beautiful sights of all is a free-flowing mountain stream, like Idaho Springs. Waterfalls such as this have been a source of power for years. This spring is complete with its own water wheel. But for the racers coming to the mile-high altitude of Vandermeer Speedway, they have to make some changes. Steve has the story.
The first thing you notice when you drive to higher elevations is your car runs terrible. It doesn't have any power, it doesn't want to start, it stalls very easily. The racers have the same problem when they come from sea level to Vandermeer Speedway, elevation 5,860 feet. But the Top Fuel and funny car guys like Billy Meyer have found some ways to try to bring some of that power back on the mountain. Let me show you. One thing you can do is to come here with an engine with higher compression pistons, okay? Now that would be the mountain compression, about 9-to-1, and this would be sea level, about 6-to-1. Another thing you can do in that same engine is install a different camshaft with the lobes ground to allow the intake valve to remain open longer, the exhaust valve to open later, hopefully trapping more air into the cylinder. Now the third thing you can do, and about everybody does, is drive the blower harder than you would at sea level. And they do that by putting a giant pulley down there on the bottom to drive a very small pulley on the top. That's about a 59% overdrive compared to maybe 39% at sea level. Now, the final thing, and everybody's favorite, more nitromethane. This is right out of Billy Meyer's tank. 100% uncut nitro. Street value, about $24 a gallon. Nitro is an oxygen bearer. That's why they use it in the first place. But should you move to a Denver and Aspen, don't worry about your passenger car. Just have the carburetor rejetted. It'll run fine. Slow, but fine.
Steve, that's kind of like me. Slow, but fine at this altitude. Here's Larry Miner, the owner of the Larry Miner Racing Team. 2 Top Fuel dragsters and a funny car. This is the boss himself. Miner has all 3 of his cars in competition at this event, as does the owner of this car. This is the car owned by John Kerry and driven by Hank Endres. Would you believe the difficulty in campaigning 3 Top Fuel dragsters at one time at one event? 2 out of the 3 qualified. Hank Endres did the best, qualifying in the number 8 spot and making it here to the second round. The other car owned by John Kerry that qualified was Jody Smart. He lost in the first round of racing. Endres, based on the East Coast in his hometown of Pennsville, New Jersey, defeated Texan Gene Snow in the first round of racing at the Mile High Nationals, while Larry Miner defeated Richard Holcomb of Georgia. Miner lives in San Jacinto, California, and is in agribusiness. He owns one of the largest potato farming operations anywhere in the United States. Utilizing some of the new techniques in aerodynamics, the Kerry car has the fully enclosed driver's cockpit, and the fuel tank in the front has been modified somewhat to take advantage of the aerodynamics of that, using it as a wing, trying to force the front wheels on the ground. The more conventional style car for Miner in the far lane. Practically invisible light beams stretch across the starting line. The 2 cars come into those beams, they're staged, and it is a great start for Hank Endres. But look at Larry Miner come on, and at the finish line, by half a car length, Larry Miner wins the race. Oh, that was incredibly close. 5.78 second elapsed time. His speed, 251 miles an hour. As we look again, Endres appears to have the advantage right off the starting line. Then Larry Miner's car loses traction. That's the tire smoke you see. Those tires are actually spinning, and Endres has a nice lead at this point. But the last half of the track is all Larry Miner's as he blows past Hank Endres, and at the finish line by half a car length, he wins the race.
Well, for a fellow who doesn't race all that often, Larry Minor looking very strong today. Your 578 to his 579.
Well, Steve, the car's running pretty good. We've got the new Pete Jackson fuel system on it, and I tell you, it's good to be back out here, and we're going to do a good job for Miller this year.
Back at the starting line, no, you're not seeing double. This is the second top fuel dragster in that Minor team. The funny car, driven by Ed McCulloch, lost out in first-round competition. This is Gary Beck in the near lane. In the far lane is the California fireman, Ray Stutz. You saw him upset Dan Pastorini in the first round of racing. But for the car that appears identical to Larry Minor, it's got one of the all-time great drivers in drag racing, Gary Beck. In first-round competition, Beck defeated Jody Smart. Ray Stutz from California, a fireman by trade, but he has got a rather unique avocation. He raises snakes, exotic snakes, that he then resells for nearly $1,000 apiece. The crew chief for Gary Beck, Bernie Federley, holding his hand out, telling Gary, hold up for just a second. Let's make sure the engine has the proper amount of heat in it before we go to the starting line to make this run. Gary Beck, two-time world champion back in 1974 and 1983, is a 19-time winner on the NHRA National Event Circuit. For Ray Stutz, he has yet to collect his first major event victory. Both cars coming into the staging beams, awaiting the green light, and it is Ray Stutz off first by a big lead, and he extends it at the finish line. Something going wrong with Beck's car, and Ray Stutz advances to the semifinals. A very respectable 5.85 second elapsed time. His speed, 231 miles an hour. Back in the funny car pit area, Mark Oswald, the number 2 qualifier, hard at work, getting his Pontiac Trans Am bodied car ready for round number 2 racing in funny car that'll be coming up in just a few moments. The crew completely disassembling this engine. That's routine maintenance between rounds on these nitro burning engines. Here is Shirley Muldowney, the premier woman driver in all forms of motorsports, making a dramatic comeback after a disastrous accident back in 1984 at the NHRA Grand Nationals at Saint-Air near Montreal, Canada. She is racing against Eddie Hill, who upset Gary Ormsby in the first round. We didn't see Shirley in our USA Sports coverage of the NHRA Summer Nationals a couple of weeks ago. It was at Saint-Air this year that once again that racetrack almost got the best of Shirley Muldowney. A gigantic engine explosion. The car going sideways, almost losing control was Shirley, but this time she was able to drive out of it. However, the mechanical difficulties caused by that engine explosion so intense, she was unable to make the race at the Summer Nationals. But here at Denver, she has regained the performance level, qualifying in the number 3 spot and beating Connie Coletta, the defending champion, in the first round. And look at the hole shot for Eddie Hill. He gets off the starting line first. Shirley is trying to catch him, but Eddie Hill upsets Shirley Muldowney. And Eddie Hill, with a 597, 240 mile an hour run, is slower than Shirley's 591, but look how he won it. At the starting line, the car in the far lane, Texan Eddie Hill puts a driving job on Shirley Muldowney. He gets the advantage off the starting line and holds on to take the win a quarter of a mile away. At that finish line, you can see Shirley Muldowney is closing fast, but not quick enough to catch the fleeing Texan, who wins the race by just a half a length.
Good driving, huh?
Oh, it just felt wonderful, wonderful. I didn't know it was better driving or what. It's just great to be here. 2 rounds. Yeah. Let me go say something to Shirley. Excuse me just a minute.
Ever the Southern gentleman, Eddie Hill out of Wichita Falls, Texas, heads over to pay his respects to 3-time world champion Shirley Muldowney. Eddie Hill with a hole shot victory and a very happy Ursi Hill as they will be going into the semifinals. Back at the starting line, this is Dick LaHaye. Meantime, Steve has had a chance to catch up with Shirley Muldowney.
Well, the elation being felt over in the Hill crew, obviously, there's none over here, Shirley.
No, there isn't.
Ran just a little bit quicker.
I thought I had him in the lights. It was real close. It was hard to tell. They told me I was late. Didn't seem like I was that late.
Didn't look like it does either, but a 591 to a 594.
Boy, that's late enough, isn't it?
And obviously disappointed Shirley Muldowney, but she's got to be happy that she has found that performance level that she started off this 1986 season with at the Winter Nationals. Dick LaHaye in round number 1 racing defeated the legendary Don Garlits, while Joe Amato defeated Darrell Gwynn, the low qualifier at the Mile High Nationals. For Amato, he is trying to find the performance that carried him to the 1984 World Championship. Amato is in the far lane, LaHaye in the near lane. Both drivers being cautious about the staging procedures. They want to make sure their cars are set just right. And a great start for Dick LaHaye. He's got the advantage. But at the finish line, a close race again. And Joe Amato is the winner. 5.70 seconds to a 5.79 for Dick LaHaye. Again, in slow motion, you can see just how close this race was. Off the starting line, it's almost dead even. The tire smoke begins for Dick LaHaye. His car has lost traction. That wipes out the starting line advantage he gained by the brilliant driving job. Amato comes by in the middle of the race course and then holds on as they thunder across the finish to take the win.
Well, a victory in the second round, and what consistency? 5.70 this time.
Yeah, the car is working good. It shook a little bit at the bottom, but Tim Richards and the boys are doing a good job tuning the car, and we just want to maintain the consistency and go 2 more rounds.
This sets up the semifinal racing. Joe Amato against Eddie Hill, with Joe Amato having lane choice by virtue of his lower elapsed time. Larry Minor will go against Ray Stutz, Minor having lane choice. And back in the pits on Ray Stutz, Top Fuel dragster, the work is going on, getting that vehicle prepared for the 3rd round of competition in Top Fuel at the Mile High Nationals. There are hills. That was the cry that brought thousands of people westward in the late 1800s. This gold mine, the Argo Gold Mine, was in business up until 1943, and you can still pan for gold. And they're panning for gold at Bandimere Speedway. Mining this track for a share of the $500,000 in prize money are the Thundering Funny Cars. This is Billy Meyer from Waco, Texas. Meyer qualified in the number 6 position at this event. He is racing against the number 2 qualifier, Mark Oswald. Oswald driving the car owned by Paul Candies and Leonard Hughes and based in Houma, Louisiana. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and this Mile High Nationals at Bandimere Speedway has attracted racers from throughout the United States and Canada. Both Oswald and Meyer did not have a good season in 1985, but in 1984, Mark Oswald was the world champion. At this Mile High Nationals, Billy Meyer defeated the veteran Jim Dunn in round number 1 of funny car racing. Quite a crowd-pleasing show put on by these fiberglass-bodied funny cars. They utilize a fiberglass body over a tubular chassis. The powertrain components are very similar to those in a Top Fuel dragster. The nitro-burning, supercharged, fuel-injected engine that can make upwards of 2,500 horsepower or more at sea level. Here at altitude, they may be down on power just a bit. The Pontiac Trans Am-bodied car on the far side, driven by Mark Oswald. In the near lane, it is Billy Meyer wheeling his Ford Mustang. The staging and starting procedures the same as in Top Fuel. They're set, the green light goes on, and both cars losing traction, but Oswald recovers very quickly, and look how close it was at the finish. Mark Oswald wins it, 6.04 seconds elapsed time. His speed, 246 miles an hour. Meyer actually ran a quicker elapsed time at 6:02, but the advantage off the starting line went to Oswald. Mark Oswald, regarded by many as one of the finest drivers in his ability to detect when the car loses traction. Just a little bit of smoke off the tires of the Pontiac. Then Mark Oswald quickly recovers, gets the traction back. Billy Meyer smokes his tires, loses traction just a little bit longer, and loses the race.
There's a good chance here that Mark Oswald isn't really sure who won that drag race, but I can tell you, you did.
Had no idea. It was awful close.
You ran a 6:04 to his quicker 6:02. Good job.
Thank you. It's been a long time. This car fools you a lot. It's got a staggered front end, and it makes you look awful bad.
How did the car feel going down the racetrack? Any shake, any problems, any loss of traction?
I was a little loose in the middle. It's not running on the other end of the racetrack, and I think we've got an idea now what it is, so maybe we can correct that.
This is the reigning world champion, Kenny Bernstein, the winner of the Summer Nationals. You saw him do it at Englishtown, New Jersey, right here on USA Sports when he defeated John Force. Now, Kenny Bernstein doing his burnout. Bernstein racing against a second-generation driver. This is Mike Dunn, the son of the veteran Jim Dunn, driving this day for Joe Pisano. For Kenny Bernstein, the winningest funny car driver in a single season ever, last year he won 6 national event titles. The escape hatch comes down. Bernstein doing the dry burnouts, a second one as he approaches the starting line. In the near lane is Mike Dunn, a little more conservative as he does his dry burnouts, creeping that car forward into those light beams that go across the racetrack. Starter Buster Couch and his crew checking over both vehicles. Kenny Bernstein's crew chief Dale Armstrong with the final word to his boss, driving the Ford Tempo in the far lane. Mike Dunn, driving for Joe Pisano, is at the wheel of a Dodge Daytona. A great start for Kenny Bernstein. He pulls ahead very quickly, and like a slot racer, he heads across the finish line with a big win over Mike Dunn. His elapsed time, 5.86 seconds. His speed, 238 miles an hour. Back at the starting line, the next pair fired and ready to do their burnout. This is John Force. Force we saw at the Summer Nationals, runner-up to Kenny Bernstein, and here is the fastest car at this race. That's right, the funny car holding top speed of this event is the Dodge Daytona, driven by Johnny West and owned and tuned by Roland Leong. At over 253 miles an hour, Johnny West's speed has exceeded even that of the top fuel dragsters. Steve?
Well, they don't come much smoother or much nicer than that, Kenny. A 586, no contest.
Oh, that's super. It was pretty loose up there on the dry, and I had to do another short hop, and Dale was directing me, said to hang on to it. She was going to be a little skatey, and it was. So.
How does he tell you that?
Well, he just goes, you know, like that, and he pushes me back a little further, and I do another dry. Whenever I'd have to do more than one dry, I know that we've got some problems in the slickness area and the tire spinning, so I know what he's telling me.
Bernstein, the #1 qualifier, has shown remarkable consistency thus far in elimination. Roland Leong looking over his Dodge Daytona, driven by this man, Johnny West of Phoenix, Arizona, defeating Tim Gross in round #1. John Force, runner-up 8 times on the NHRA National Event Trail, defeated Bello Woods in the first round, and Force qualified here in the #7 spot. West, your #3 qualifier, has got to be considered the favorite in this race. And don't forget, West holds top speed of the meet at over 253 miles an hour. Force from Yorba Linda, California, using a Chevrolet Cavalier-bodied car. He finished 5th in the world last season. Both cars coming into those staging beams. They're ready. A green light start for both drivers. Both of them smoking the tires, but West recovers first, and Johnny West wins the race. The Roland Leong crew quite happy with the time, 5.94 seconds, and once again, 250 miles an hour plus for Johnny West. As we look in slow motion, you can see almost an even start off the line. Then, as they get a few hundred feet down track, the tires begin to smoke. First for Johnny West. He senses that, backs off the throttle, regains the traction, and at that point has pulled ahead of John Force. Then, as the final few feet of this racetrack disappear, Johnny West crosses the finish line first.
Johnny West goes into the semifinals with a fine 594. He might have made the first move up there, though.
Oh, I've got this sleepy syndrome this week. I don't know what the heck's wrong with me.
Need a nap.
Oh, no. Actually, it's been a little bit easier for me this week, and, you know, I don't know what's wrong with me, but definitely the car's making up for it, and it's saving me.
Big speed, 250.
Oh, the car's been making plenty of power. We've had a tough time getting a hold of the track all week. But
in fact, that car is running faster than the dragsters. You have top speed of the meet in qualifying at like 253. Why?
Well, I don't know. I guess a lot of the dragster guys would like to know that, too, and they're all trying to hire Roland right now to find out.
Seeing this out.
Thank you.
Johnny West going into the semifinals. Here's the final race of this round, and we have only a single car. Steve Hodgkinson of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, gets a big break. Jack Holsey was to have been his competition. Holsey suffered mechanical problems in round #1. unable to make the call for this second round of racing, so Hodgkinson gets a bye. The question is, will he make a hard run trying to get lane choice? The lane choice in the next round going to the man having the lower ET of the previous round, and it won't go to Hodgkinson. He saves his parts and pieces, shuts it off, and just coasts through with a 9.19 second elapsed time. But that sets up our semifinal pairings at the Mile High Nationals in Funny Car. It'll be Steve Hodgkinson going against Mark Oswald. The other pair finds Kenny Bernstein against Johnny West, with Bernstein having lane choice. Here's Steve.
Steve Hodgkinson, in only your third race as an NHRA Pro Funny Car pilot going to the semifinals. Got to feel good.
Feels great. We don't have a sponsor, and that kind of limits us to what we can do. That's why I didn't run any farther than I did this round. We were lucky to have a single that put us up in the semis, so.
And I don't know how important lane choice is. Kenny Bernstein seems to think it is.
Well, I don't really feel there's that much difference out here today. They're pretty close to the same.
Well, you're going to have to match wheels with one of the big boys, Mark Oswald, coming up.
We've run him before. There's no problem.
Okay.
Thanks.
Steve, that's what I'd call a confident young man. Back in the Eddie Hill pit area, lots of racers and lots of crew members from other teams over to help as they get ready for the semifinal race against Joe Amato. In the high country of Colorado is Clear Creek as it cuts through Devil's Gate Gorge that's spanned by the Devil's Gate Bridge. The Georgetown Loop Railroad, an 1884 narrow gauge railroad totally restored, is a real attraction for visitors. A real attraction on the drag racing trail will be the Quaker State North Star Nationals coming up in Brainerd, Minnesota, August 15th through the 17th. Then over Labor Day weekend, August 28th through September 1st, the granddaddy of them all, the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis. There's been some tremendous happenings here. Steve?
Dave, over the years, we've talked about violent engine explosions. Well, Gene Snow had one in qualifying here at the Mile High Nationals, more like a strange engine explosion. Look at this. No one has ever seen anything quite like it. That is an intake valve impaled right in the center of a piston. Now, first it looked like it tried to go over there and said, no, I don't like it there. I better center myself. The amazing thing is the blower didn't even come up. Everybody has been by to look at this part. No one, as I said, has ever seen anything like it. And Big Daddy Don Garlitz is trying to get it from Gene for a display case in his drag racing museum in Ocala, Florida. Just incredible.
Incredible and expensive, Steve. A tough break for Gene Snow when that engine let go. This is Pro Stock Eliminator, semi-final round of racing. The world champion, Bob Glidden, in his Ford Thunderbird, regaining the form that carried him to that world championship, but he has yet to win a race this year. Here is a surprise. Stan Mizell defeated a breaking Butch Leal in the second round of racing to earn the right to race Bob Glidden. These are very exotic race cars using 500 cubic inch engines, 2 4-barrel carburetors. They race on pump gasoline, and it is close competition. Stan Mizell in the near lane, Bob Glidden in the far lane, and the whole shot to Mizell. Mizell could pull off the upset. He's got the lead, but look at the power of the Ford Thunderbird. And by a couple of car lengths, Bob Glidden wins the race, 7.92 seconds. His speed, 174 miles an hour, but Stan Mizell of Green Cove Springs, Florida, gave it all he had. The Camaro, driven by Bruce Allen, racing against the Oldsmobile Forenza of Warren Johnson. In the previous round, Johnson defeated Joe Lapone, while Gordy Rivera was the victim of Bruce Allen. Allen's car, the Chevy Camaro, campaigned by Raren Morrison out of Arlington, Texas. They are considered to be one of the premier Chevrolet racing teams in the country today. The Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson out of Duluth, Georgia, utilizing a 500 cubic inch Oldsmobile racing engine. A great start for both drivers, and this is a close race. Look at them as they head to the finish line. It's anybody's race, and Warren Johnson wins by a matter of inches. 7.98 seconds. His speed, 174 miles an hour. As we go back and look again in slow motion, you can see just how close this race really was. Both these drivers were looking at each other all the way down the racetrack. An almost even start off the line. The Camaro in the near lane, the Oldsmobile in the far lane. At this point, maybe by inches, Warren Johnson's ahead, but Bruce Allen put on quite a charge as he came up alongside of Warren Johnson and stayed there as they marched their way through the traps at over 170 miles an an hour, and there you see, Warren Johnson wins it to set up the finals. Bob Glidden, the world champion, against the most recent winner on the national event trail, Warren Johnson. Bob Glidden will have lane choice. In Kenny Bernstein's pit area, though, work goes on, getting the car ready for the semifinal round race along with Steve Evans, and we're certainly enjoying our visit to the high country of Colorado. This is the beautiful community of Georgetown, where the public-spirited citizens have done an outstanding job in preserving the Victorian architecture so popular back during the Gold Rush era in Georgetown. On the starting line at Vandermeer Speedway, we're set for the semifinal round of Top Fuel racing. If this looks like a rematch of the previous round, it practically is. The only thing that has changed is the driver in the far car and the car itself. It looks identical to the previous round, but this is Larry Minor, the team owner. In the near lane is Ray Stutz, the man that beat Gary Beck. But he's got his hands full with the boss. Larry Minor has got a lead that he will not give up. And Larry Minor goes into the finals of the Mile High Nationals. His elapsed time, 5.82 seconds. His speed, 244 miles an hour. This is the Texan. Eddie Hill, 50 years old, 20 years out of drag racing. He's back into the sport, and now in the semifinals to race against Joe Amato. Steve has had a chance to catch up to Larry Minor.
Well, Larry Minor said earlier he was just out here having fun. Well, now we're having tons of fun going into the final round. A 582.
Well, it slowed down a little bit, but, you know, I didn't think the track was as good, and we put a little bigger gear in it and took a little bit out of the engine. And, of course, the air is going away, too, but...
Getting thinner than it already was?
Well, I think so. I'm having a hard time breathing for only 5 seconds.
Okay, David, let's go back to the starting line and see who Larry's opponent will be. Could it be the biggest upset of the year, Eddie Hill, or will it be Joe Amato?
Steve, if I were an odds maker, I'd have to go with Joe Amato based on his performances at this meet. He's got the lower elapsed time of these two cars, recording a 5:69 in the first round of competition when he defeated the low qualifier Darrell Gwynn. But Eddie Hill is right there. He is up with Joe Amato, and at the finish line, it's an upset. Eddie Hill pulls it out in the last few feet as Amato has engine problems. The crew absolutely overjoyed as Eddie Hill's 5.78 second, 246 mile an hour run, good enough to put him in the finals against Larry Minor. As we see in slow motion, the very slight advantage off the starting line went to Joe Amato. Amato appears to be building a lead at this point. As Eddie Hill begins to smoke the tires, he falls behind. Then, as they approach the finish line, which is 1,320 feet down track, it is Eddie Hill by inches.
Eddie Hill, on his first anniversary in NHRA Pro Top Fuel Drag Racing, goes into his first ever final round. As you heard him tell us earlier, he'd never even seen a win light before. Now he has already collected 3, including one over the always tough Joe Amato, who was the quickest man in this race. I've got to talk to Eddie before his crew gets here while I can still hear. Congratulations. How did the run go?
Oh, everything just worked great. Donnie did a hell of a job, and Lanny McGleasy did a hell of a job with the clutch, and the whole crew, all the volunteer pit crew just did great.
578.
Oh, far out. Great.
Golly Couch, crew chief, comes in for a hug. This gang really deserves to celebrate. I tell you, if they win it, David, there'll be a party in Denver tonight.
Steve, there'll be a party regardless of who wins. And here comes Joe Amato, the losing driver, coming in to offer his congratulations to Eddie Hill, setting up our finals. Eddie Hill against Larry Minor, and Hill has lane choice in the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator at the Mile High Nationals. On the starting line, the burnouts are completed as we move to the semifinals of Funny Car Eliminator. It is Mark Oswald in the far lane, driving against Steve Hodgkinson in the near lane. Hodgkinson got the break of this race when in the previous round, his competition, Jack Holsey, unable to answer the call. He had a part-saving single. Will it help? Both cars smoking the tires. Oswald recovers and pulls ahead, and by a car length, it is Mark Oswald into the finals. Oswald, 5.98 second elapsed time. His speed, 249 miles an hour. He found the speed, but the elapsed time continues to elude that Candies and Hughes team. In slow motion, we can see Steve Hodkinson doing a great job staying alongside of Mark Oswald. They both began to smoke the tires, but once again, Oswald recovered nicely. He got the traction back, and his car just squirted ahead by about a car length. That was the advantage that Oswald had as he headed to the finish line, and that was his margin of victory. Mark Oswald into the finals against one of these two drivers. In the near lane is Johnny West. He's got the fastest car at this event. He is racing against Kenny Bernstein, the man that has the quickest car at this event. Bernstein has been consistently the quickest car of each round of eliminations. Bernstein following closely the directions of his crew chief Dale Armstrong, while Johnny West has his attention on his car owner and crew chief Roland Leon. The concentration of the drivers now on their starting procedure. The start, all important in drag races, many a race won or lost by how quickly the driver gets off the starting line. Bernstein in the far lane, West in the near lane, and it is Bernstein off first. Again, another consistent run, and for Kenny Bernstein into the finals with another 5.86 second elapsed time. His speed, 242 miles an hour. That sets up the funny car final between the first and second qualifiers. Kenny Bernstein against Mark Oswald, with Bernstein having lane choice. In the pit area of Larry Minor, the work goes on. He'll be racing Eddie Hill at the Mile High Nationals at Vandermeer Speedway near Denver, Colorado. Kenny Bernstein's pit crew for the last time at this event, putting that engine back together, getting his Ford Tempo ready to go into the funny car finals to race against Mark Oswald. Kenny himself performing the fuel chores as that car being prepared for the funny car final. This is the final in Pro Stock. The Ford Thunderbird of the world champion Bob Glidden racing against the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. It will be Glidden in the far lane, Johnson in the near lane. Johnson's car appears to be smaller, not necessarily lighter. The rules call for a minimum weight with driver of 2,350 pounds. While the Oldsmobile Forenza may be slightly smaller in size than Bob Glidden's Ford T-Bird, that smooth aerodynamic style of the T-Bird is proven to be a very fast car indeed. He set the national record, both elapsed time and speed, back at the Summer Nationals a couple of weeks ago, and Bob Glidden has got to be considered the favorite in this race. He has had low ET of every round. The drivers concentrating on the start. The Ford of Glidden in the far lane, Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile taking their time about staging, wanting to be just right on their starting line procedures. Johnson inching forward into the staging beams, and it's a green light start. Glidden's got a slight advantage. Will he have the horsepower here in the final? As they head to the finish line, it is Glidden by 2 car lengths, and the Mile High victory, his first this season. Billy and Rusty Glidden, a crew along with wife Etta, just overjoyed at Bob Glidden's first win of this season. In slow motion replay, you can just see how this Ford dominated the action. From the start to the finish, the T-Bird of Bob Glidden, the world champion, pulled ahead of Warren Johnson, and he stayed there wire to wire. Coming down to the finish line, the lead was even extended as they passed the NHRA official standing at trackside, watching out for any of the problems. Glidden had none as he crossed the finish line 2 car lengths ahead of Warren Johnson.
Winning his first race of the season has got to feel almost as good as the first race of your career, the way this year has gone.
Absolutely, Steve. We've begun to wonder if we were ever going to win another race. This is a very important race for us. You know, at this point in the Winston points last year, we were about a heads-up race, Warren, myself, and a few others in the chase. I think we finished up winning by 22 or 300 points. So the Winston points certainly isn't out of the picture for us right now.
And you leave here with a track record of 784, the quickest anybody's ever run in this kind of altitude.
We feel really well and really good about the way the cars run. I think we came to this race prepared to do what we did.
After the crash in Atlanta, you needed this. The whole team needed this to know you were still capable.
Yes, we did. It's been a long, long climb for us. I'm telling you, I'm really happy.
I can tell. Pro Stock champion, the Mile High Nationals, Bob Glidden.
Steve, I can tell that Bob Glidden's happy, raising his hands, giving himself a round of applause, and now shaking hands with the turnaround workers. Bob Glidden, the Pro Stock champion at the Mile High National. There's trouble on the racetrack for Eddie Hill. The finalist in Top Fuel Eliminator can't get the car to go in reverse. Lots of crew members, lots of help out trying to push him back. Larry Minor, his opponent, is sitting patiently waiting. The car now is being pushed back, but these cars tend to overheat rather rapidly. The question is, how long can Minor wait? He's sitting there watching as Eddie Hill, using everybody that he can find to push him back. When the reverser brakes in these cars, they weigh about 1,900, 2,000 pounds, and it takes a lot of manpower to push them back. The crew doing a valiant job, but they're still a long ways from that starting line. And NHRA starter Buster Couch gives the word to Larry Minor. Bring the car forward and stage it. He waves to the guys pushing back Eddie Hill. Get out of the way. The green light is on for Larry Minor. He is your champion in Top Fuel Eliminator, and the engine giving problems for Minor. It may have overheated sitting there on the starting line, and he smokes out a lot of the pistons, burning the pistons as he goes across the finish line, but the win is his. 5.90 seconds. Larry Minor, your champion in Top Fuel. Crew Chief Donnie Couch going over to shut off the engine in Eddie Hill's car, and the Cinderella story for Eddie Hill is over. Flashes of fire coming out of the engine for Larry Minor as he passes the stricken Eddie Hill, but Minor wins the championship.
Larry Minor wins his second NHRA National Championship. The first one was a little tainted in that you raced your own team car. Not this one, other than a final round breaker. You sawed your way through this field.
Well, the car ran consistent all day. I really wanted to race Eddie, but our temperature was coming up pretty good, and you can see we waited as long as we could, and we burnt the engine up anyway.
You did indeed.
We had a transmission problem or something.
So the temperature was coming up. We could see the damage in the lights, and you hadn't done that all day, so it was hotter than usual.
And it was ready to leave. You know, these cars are very temperamental, and when it's time, you know, you should leave the starting line, you should leave.
You'd like to leave with another car if you can, but...
Oh yeah, but you know, we got some engine damage, but I'm really happy. All my guys have really pitched in and helped me this weekend. They're the ones that make this thing possible for me, because I just come to a race every now and then, and Gary Beck has my car already, and Ed, they all jump in and help get it running. So really, I owe everything to those guys.
You had to drive it, and you did it fine.
Well, I have fun doing this.
That's it, Larry Minor, the Top Fuel champion here on the mountain.
Steve, in the eyes of this huge crowd, here's another champion. This is Eddie Hill, back after 20 years, a force to be reckoned with in Top Fuel Eliminator. One more race remains, the finals in funny car. Mark Oswald, Kenny Bernstein in just a moment. Race remains at the Mile High Nationals at Vandermeer Speedway, and what a classic confrontation. The number 1 and number 2 qualifiers in funny car meeting here in the final. This is Kenny Bernstein. He has dominated competition. He has low elapsed time of the meet. Through every round of elimination, Bernstein has had the quickest elapsed time. It was just a couple of weeks ago in Englishtown, New Jersey, that Kenny Bernstein came out the victor in funny car eliminator at the Summer National. He is leading in the points chase for the World Championship this season. That big number 1 on the side of the car indicates he's the reigning world champion. He took it away from this man. Mark Oswald driving for Candies and Hughes. The Pontiac Trans Am qualified in the number 2 spot, but he has been about 0.15 of a second behind Kenny Bernstein in the performance level thus far. This is the final for the title of Funny Car Eliminator. A great start. Oswald smokes the tires. Can he recover? It's a close race to the finish, and Mark Oswald pulls off the upset of the meet. He establishes low elapsed time at 5.81 seconds at 252 miles an hour. Mark Oswald, your funny car champion. When they leave the starting line, it is a perfect start for both drivers. The front wheels on Oswald's car off the ground. As they come back to the pavement, the rear tires begin to smoke. But as I told you before, Oswald, one of the best. He recovers quickly, stays alongside of Kenny Bernstein, then begins to inch ahead to the finish line where it's just a matter of a couple of feet.
Good race, Kenny.
Not only does Mark Oswald win the Mile High Nationals, Mark, you took low elapsed time in the event away from your opponent, Kenny Bernstein, a 5.81 and a speed 252 miles per hour.
I left the valve all the way open. It was awful close. I hazed the tires in the middle of the track, and he was out in front of me, and I come back around him. It was just, they put up a hell of a race. So those guys, when you can beat a car like the Budweiser car, you know, the old Milwaukee Brewery can be plenty proud, because those guys are tough.
I would have to say the two of you right now are the toughest funny cars in this sport.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The big speed. Even a year ago, that seemed impossible in this altitude. Why?
Well, you know, Pontiac's helped us a lot in the wind tunnel. That's got a, you know, tremendous amount to do with it, you know, and everybody's been working hard. Kenny's been out in front of us. Everybody's been flogging their cars, and that's what happens when you work that hard.
We may still yet have a great battle for the World Championship, huh?
I'd like to think so.
Mark Oswald, he won the world title in '84. He'd sure like to repeat.
For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClelland, and our congratulations to all the winners here at the Mile High Nationals. You make a point to be with us on USA Sports when we bring you coverage of the Quaker State North Star Nationals on Monday, September 8th. The executive producer of Diamond P Sports is Harvey M. Palish. Supervising producer is John B. Mullen. Produced and directed by Ron Giles. The 1986 Mile High Nationals has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Fram Bendix Autolite, which are all quality products of Allied Automotive. And by Budweiser, for all you do, this Bud's for you. And by National Dragster, drag racing's leading news weekly.
There's more auto racing excitement next Monday at 10 when USA Sports brings you the Dover Delaware 200. Now stay tuned as Lee Majors, Leif Erikson, and Emmy Award winner Jane Wyatt team up in the classic tale of witchcraft and lust for money. It's The Monkey's Paw, a retelling on the original Alfred Hitchcock Hour, next on USA.